we go. Okay. So last time we finished our study of the final section, looking down here, called the Centers and Initiation. Where we learned about the rod of initiation that is wielded by the solar logos. Usually we are talking about either the rod wielded by the Christ or by the planetary logos, but this section is on this particular rod called the sevenfold flaming fire, which came to our logos from Sirius. This rod, which carries a voltage, we're told, of pure phohatic force from cosmic levels, is used to initiate the seven heavenly men on cosmic levels. It is also capable of being used during planetary emergencies, but has yet to be so used, at least on Earth. All three rods of initiation are phohatically charged with the fire of matter plus electric fire. This dual fire being necessary for the transformation of the initiate. If it was just the fire of spirit, it couldn't move through the body and through the chakras of the initiate. But the fire of matter allows it to affect and transform the initiate. Next, we began the last and shortest division of the first part of the book, called the Law of Economy, which begins with a list of this law's effects and its subsidiary laws. The wielder of this law in our solar system is the third logos, who uses the law of economy to create and maintain matter, the third aspect of divinity. This law, which employs the line of least resistance, controls the scattering of the atoms of matter, the dissociation of the atoms of matter from each other, the wide distributions of the atoms of matter, the vibratory rhythm, the heterogeneity and the quality of the atoms of matter, and the inherent rotary action. The law of economy is the basis for the separative action of matter, which stands as the opposite pole of spirit. We then learned briefly about the law of attraction, which governs the second aspect of divinity, quote, the activities of the entities who embody this aspect are directed to the attracting of matter to spirit and the gradual approximation of the two poles. This law results in cohesion and in the production of congeries of atoms in various formations. The attraction that characterizes this law actually comes about from spirit itself, but demonstrates through this second law. The law of attraction also results in association, form building, adaptation of form to vibration, and a relative homogeneity of group unity, as well as cyclic, spiralic movement in contradistinction to rotary motion, which characterizes the law of economy. One result of the law of attraction is the pain and misery experienced by human beings, which is brought on by a constant need to adjust and adapt the form to the influx of spirit. DK says pain is only caused by resistance and is a necessary phase in the process of evolution. So it's not just some distant cosmic law. this law of attraction is affects all humanity by the fact that it is the primary law of this solar system and therefore impacts our evolution through this quality of pain, which is only experienced, we're told, on Saturn, Mars, and Earth. Finally, we took a brief look at the law of synthesis that governs the first aspect of divinity, which DK also calls the law of enforced unity and of essential homogeneity. It is this law that, quote, governs the eventual synthesis of self with self, lesser with greater, and finally with the all self, which is akin to the monad and the groups of monads and the continuous synthesizing with higher and higher forms of self. Also of essence with essence in contradistinction to the synthesis of matter and spirit. And this takes us up to where we left off last time. Any thoughts or questions about this review? Okay, as always, I encourage you to speak up with any questions, any thoughts you have during the webinar. It's always way more interesting if we have a dialogue than if I just deliver this material as though it were a lecture. Okay, so next we're told that the law of synthesis demonstrates as one abstraction. Abstraction being the means by which release of the essence from the imprisoning form actually takes place, which results in, this is progressive list, results in spiritual liberation. From the perspective of spirit, death of the form always results in liberation of the spirit aspect. Destruction of form through the withdrawal of spirit, this is the second effect. At this point, the skin is shed. All magnetic attractions are neutralized. The form, the outworn form falls away and resolves into the lesser lives of which it is composed. And then through the law of attraction, the next most appropriate form is attracted. These happen simultaneously. Absolute homogeneity and absolute essential unity. The word absolute poses a bit of a conundrum for, as mentioned before, during the life of a universal logos, the self expands through a nearly infinite series of higher identifications with self on its journey to the all self, making this a relative absolute essential unity, which is a contradiction in terms that is really irreconcilable from the human perspective. And then we finally have progressive forward motion, suggesting a progressive lessening of spiral-like motion and a greater demonstration of direct motion. These spirals become increasingly elongated in response to the pull of spirit, or the great attractor at the center of all. At this point, the rotary motion only demonstrates through the atoms that make up the form aspect of the different sheaths. Any thoughts or questions so far? Alrighty then, onwards. Next up, can we get a reader, please?
And Veronica, you want to read?
Yes. Thus can be seen the wonderful synthesis brought about by the evolutionary working of these three cosmic laws, each of them embodying the mode of work of certain cosmic entities or existences. The final two will be taken up in their right place. Now we will touch but briefly upon the law of matter, that of economy. This is the law that lies back of what has been mistakenly called the fall by religious writers, by which is defined in reality the evolutionary process cosmically considered. It led to a sevenfold differentiation in the matter of the system, just as the law of attraction led to the sevenfold psychic differentiation of the sons of man, and the law of synthesis results in the sevenfold perfection of the same Manasaputras. So we have an interesting connection between the seven planes, or the seven grades of matter, the seven heavenly men, the seven divine Manasaputras, or the seven types of wisdom love, the seven qualities of wisdom which are produced by the cosmic entities, the Kumaras, by the aid of knowledge through the medium of matter.
Thank you, Aunt Veronica. First, thus can be seen the wonderful synthesis brought about by the evolutionary working of these three cosmic laws, each of them embodying the mode of work of certain cosmic entities or existences. Okay, so since these three laws govern the full spectrum of manifestation, including both the involutionary and evolutionary paths, we can assume that they are implemented from very high and inclusive cosmic sources. I mean, what is the actual source of any one of these laws? How does it come to influence our solar system? It comes from some great being. Is it, is it galactic? Is it the one about whom not may be said? The phrase wonderful synthesis suggests the seamless interaction of these laws, with all three exerting their influence simultaneously in order to facilitate the plan on, for example, our globe. So, once one begins to come under the law of synthesis, you're really uh, under the influence of all three laws at the same time, and their influence is progressive and therefore seamless. Okay, next. The final two will be taken up in their right place. Now we will touch but briefly upon the law of matter, that of economy. So though DK has briefly introduced all three laws in this first section of the book, he doesn't elaborate on the law of attraction and the law of synthesis until the end of the second and third sections of TCF. So now on to greater detail concerning the law of economy. This is the law that lies back of what has been mistakenly called the fall by religious writers, by which is defined in reality the involutionary process, cosmically considered. It led to a sevenfold differentiation in the matter of the system. So the idea of fallen angels led by Lucifer, who disobeyed God and was plunged into hell as punishment, is a gross distortion of this natural law here under discussion, a distortion which has caused incalculable harm. This is HPB's take on this from Secret Doctrine. Could we get a reader, please? Mikhail, are you there? Okay. Anna Sklar, can you read? How about Annette Evett? Or could I just get a volunteer? I don't know what happened to Mikhail.
I can read.
Who is that? Marianne, great.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Demon de inversus. The devil is now called darkness by the church, whereas in the Bible he is called the Son of God. See Job. The bright star of the early morning, Lucifer. See Isaias. There is a whole philosophy of dogmatic craft in the reason why the first archangel who sprang from the depths of chaos was called Lucifer, the luminous son of the morning or man.
Thank you. Okay. Hang on a sec. Okay, so the true fall was just simply the involutional first outpouring from the third logos, which, in accordance with the plan, initiates manifestation on the 7 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane. Okay, next up. Just as the law of attraction led to the 7-fold psychic differentiation of the sons of mind, and the law of synthesis results in the 7-fold perfection of the same Manasaputras. This is a phrase. So it's an important comparative statement. To quote, 7-fold psychic differentiation stems from the influence of the 7 rays. The 7-fold psychic differentiation of the sons of mind are the soul rays. At least that's how we experience them. For the sons of mind themselves, who are the divine Manasaputras, the 7 sacred planets, they are the rays that they make available to our solar system, a differentiation of the 2nd ray of the solar logos. And these came into being and function through, we're here told, the law of attraction. Another name for the sons of mind is Manasaputras. These are the great beings who overshadowed animal man and planted the spark of mind, their own spark, so that we may eventually, by means of the law of attraction, come to know them as our true selves. Once soul infused, we begin to respond to the higher law of synthesis, streaming forth from the monad, which results in, quote, the 7-fold perfection of the same Manasaputras. Because we, in a sense, are them. We assume their level of consciousness, which further underscores the high initiate's identification with these Manasaputras. Next, so we have an interesting connection between, in that he lists all these 7s, 7 planes, 7 grades of matter, 7 heavenly men, 7 divine Manasaputras, or the 7 types of love wisdom. 7 qualities of wisdom, which are produced by the cosmic entities, the Kumaras by the aid of knowledge through the medium of matter. He doesn't mention it here, but there are also 7 Kumaras, of which Sanat Kumara is the central synthesizing Kumara, at least in this world period, during this globe. So DK here gives us a comparison between the evolutionary effect of the law of attraction and the law of synthesis, and the evolutionary connection between the 7 planes of matter, the 3rd aspect functioning through the law of economy. The 7 heavenly men, distributors of 2nd aspect energy through the rays, functioning through the law of attraction, and the 7 Kumaras, agents of the 1st aspect, through their association with Sanat Kumara, functioning through the law of synthesis. So he's the comparison comes through the interdependence of these three groups, thus expressing interconnection between the three laws. So what he's doing is showing how the three laws demonstrate through these groups of sevens in different ways. Okay, any thoughts or questions yet? All right. Next up, can we get a reader, please? Okay, hang on a sec.
I can read.
There are hands up.
There are hands up, yes.
Okay, let's start with okay, was that Nadell that can?
Nadell can read after the hands.
Okay, good. All right. So first of all, Aunt Veronica, what you got?
Is Sanat Kumara the eighth Kumara, the synthesizing, or is Sanat Kumara numbered in the seven?
No, there are three synthetic or abstract Kumaras and three finite Kumaras. And the three finite Kumaras are connected with the three offices, the Manu, the Bodhisattva, and the Lord of Civilization. And then the three are connected with agencies from other planets. So Sanat synthesizes those six. He's the seventh, not the eighth.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Joe?
Yeah, I am having trouble getting my arms around this. And so I think I'll start with a simple question, which is, are these things all happening at once? 49 different things, I think. Or is DK telling us these things one by one with the assumption that eventually we'll learn that they're simultaneous?
It's actually a really good question, Joe. In the beginning of any cycle, for instance, a globe where you have which is initiated for the human kingdom through the first 3.5 root races, you have a strong emphasis on the law of economy, because the whole point is the descent into matter. It's all about form creation, creating a fit vehicle so that for the eventual overshadowing by spirit, right? And then you come to this intermediary period where we are now, which is characterized by all these fours, right? Fourth globe, fourth chain, fourth root. Well, it was at its center in the fourth root race. We're now at the fifth root race, but fourth round of the fourth chain. So that's this central period where the second law comes to the fore and really determines the process. However, and that's the law of attraction. However, the law of economy is still very much active. It's just not the cutting or the wave of the human movement at this time. And then during the last root races, and it has to be added for those who take higher initiations, then the law of synthesis will come in. So at the 6th and 7th root races, at the 6th and 7th globes, and during the 6th and 7th chains, the law of synthesis will be the primary law. In effect, the law of economy will have almost dropped completely below the threshold. And the law of attraction will be working in conjunction with the law of synthesis for those final stages. So that's the way they work. So because we're in that middle period, we're in a time when all three laws are active. The law of synthesis primarily for higher initiates, moving them into association with their monad. you know, at the third, fourth, and above initiations. For all of us aspirants, disciples, who were very much being influenced by the um, law of attraction. And the law of economy governs the material world. It's how it works, right? Does that help?
Yes, it did, and no, it didn't. And we go back to the very first thing I think that we saw, and what got me going on this thought was it showed that electricity is there before any movement occurs. That's a picture that I saw. And so we get the friction, we get the solar fire, we get the spirit fire, all creating different manifestations before anything begins. And at least that was the interpretation I got out of it. And having started there, I just began to expand to it's all moving at once and it goes forward and backward at the same time.
Well, when you're talking about universally, of course, all the laws are active at once. As it impacts our planet, it seems to us to be sequential. For instance, this electricity you're talking about is Fohat, and there are 7 Fohatic brothers, or 7 levels of Fohatic demonstration. And they are very active in the law of economy, the lower brothers, you could say, you know, those that govern the lower quaternary, and they wield a certain type of electricity that is, in fact, demonstrates as the law of economy, right? It's, for instance, you know, all these qualities that here, let me get back up there. There was a list here that I'm getting back to. Yeah. That's the, it's really very, yeah. It's always amazing how much material. There it is. This is the one I wanted. All these qualities are electrical in nature. In other words, the scattering of the atom is done through these this intelligent electricity of Fohat, right? As are these other qualities, dissociation of the atoms from each other. That's, you know, that's an essential aspect of the law of economy. And then for those who can respond, then you have these qualities that come into being with the law of attraction, right? Association, form building, adaptation. Are these two happening at the same time? Of course, right? Because there is both spirit and matter at work in this middle period. Getting back. Okay. So yeah, I don't know. You know, if you want to ask another question, or you know.
No, let's go ahead. I think I get the general idea that it's up to each one of us to find out the smaller pieces and bring them together over lifetimes.
Yeah, basically we're, you know, we're responding, you know, I would say everyone here is responding to both the law of economy and the law of attraction, and the synthesizing quality that's substands the law of attraction. We respond to that as well, but not until the third initiation do we directly respond to the highest law, the law of synthesis. And that's exactly as it's supposed to be.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right, now I have to find my place here. So we were looking at, yeah, there it is. Okay. It was this. Right. So just as a law, let me make sure I haven't done this. Yeah, we did this too. Next, so we have interesting connection between the 7 planes, or the 7 grades of matter, the 7 heavenly men, 7 divine manasa putras, or the 7 types of love wisdom, the 7 qualities of wisdom, which are produced by the cosmic entities, the Kumaras, by the aid of knowledge through the medium of matter. Okay, so DK here gives us a comparison between the evolutionary effect of the law of attraction and the law of synthesis, and the evolutional connection between the 7 planes and the of matter. Yeah, we talked about this. Okay, let's go on. We're up for a reader. I'm sorry, when I
Yeah.
go back like that, sometimes I
So
lose my place.
Francis, I
So
was only away for a short time, so I'm still here. But Nadell said he was going to read.
yeah, it's Nadell's. Go ahead, Nadell. Thanks.
This law of economy has several subsidiary laws which govern its effect on the different grades of matter. As said before, this is the law swept into action by the sounds as uttered by the logos. The sacred word, or the uttered sound of the Creator, exists in different forms, and though in reality but one word, has several syllables. The syllables altogether form a solar phrase. Separated, they form certain words of power, producing different effects.
Thank you, Nadell. So first, the law of economy has several subsidiary laws which govern its effect on the different grades of matter. These subsidiary laws are the law of vibrations, going all the way back to the first page of this section, the law of adaptation, the law of repulsion, and the law of friction, as described on the title page. Okay, since the law of economy is related to the third ray, we might ask whether there is also a correlation between these subsidiary laws and the 4 rays of attribute. Vibration, first law, correlates well with the fluctuating 4th ray. Adaptation with the intelligent 5th ray, analytical 5th ray. Repulsion with the 6th ray, known for its seeking and extreme loves and hates. And friction with the 7th ray, the stasis of which, in its settled condition, brings about friction when change becomes necessary. Now, this isn't DK's teaching. This is just a correlation that I'm making here, since the third law itself, the law of economy, is so related to the third ray. So it's just an hypothesis. So next, as said before, this is the law swept into action by the sounds as uttered by the logos. So DK's book, Rays and Initiations, gives further insight on these initiating sounds. There's a whole lot of material on this, but we're just gonna look at this one. Little bit of reading on this. Go we get a reader.
Yeah, Barbara, do you want to read?
Yes, the AUM, note that I separate each aspect of this triple sound, brings the soul spirit aspect down onto the physical plane and anchors it there by the force of its outgoing vibration. Using the symbol to make my meaning clear, it is like a strong wind that pins a man against a wall and makes free effort difficult. It vivifies form. It intensifies the hold of matter upon the soul. It builds around the soul a confining prison, a prison of the senses. It is the sound of enchantment, the sound that is the source of glamour and of Maya. It is the great beguiling and deceptive energy, the note of the involutionary arc. In it are hid the secret of evil or matter, the uses of form, first as a prison, then as a training ground, and as a field of experience, and finally as the expression for the manifestation of a Son of God. Raised in Initiations, 52.
Thank you, Barbara. So, quite a forceful statement. I mean, it really makes you think twice about using the AUM in any kind of spiritual pursuit. I mean, I really struck this as one of the great one-liners, right? That it's like a strong wind that pins a man against the wall and makes free effort difficult. It's completely form-based, and that's because it's directing the AU aspects, which are, of course, the if you're going to put them in terms of the laws, you'd be looking at the law of synthesis and the law of attraction. It's using them in pursuit of the form aspect by the M, right? It is an involutional sound, right? Yeah, the note of the involutional arc. Right. So you could say that this sound happens naturally during that whole period of personality development, when experience is the purpose of one's incarnations, gaining experiences in the outer world, building the form, building the matter aspect, coordinating the matter aspect, all leading up to personality integration in Leo. During that period, the AUM is the appropriate sound, being, even though it's not directly sounded, you could say it is the sound that is emanating from one who is at that stage of development. Any questions about this? Okay. So next we have the sacred word, or the uttered sound of the Creator, exists in different forms. And though in reality but one word, has several syllables. In Initiation Human and Solar, we learned that there are three great groups of words belonging each to the A, to the U, and to the M of the AUM. Now, in my experience, the teaching really changed. You know, Initiate Human and Solar is the first of DK's books. Race Initiations was the last of the, and they really do form bookends. And I've noticed that the emphasis shifted in many ways, but specifically in relation to the AUM. It's one of those places where the teaching shifted quite a bit. Anyway, could we get a reader, please?
Ariane, you want to read? Okay, Janet.
I can read just,
Okay,
yeah, if you give me a chance.
no problem.
The words of power, or the permutations of the Aum, exist in every possible tone, subtone, and quarter tone, and upon these shades of sound, the work of creation and its sustentation is built up. A multiplicity of sound exists within each great sound and affects different groups. It must be remembered also that, generally and broadly speaking, the sounds within the solar system fall into two groups. One, the initiatory sounds, or those which produce manifestation or phenomena of any kind on all planes. 2. Eventuating sounds, or those which are produced from within the forms themselves during the evolutionary process, and which are the aggregate of the tones of every form in any particular kingdom of nature.
Thank you, Ariane. Okay, and next up, can we get a reader, please? It's just an extended passage, but I think it's worth taking a look at.
Janet, do you want to read?
It is neither possible nor desirable to enumerate the words of power, but certain general indications may be given which will help the student to realize somewhat the magnitude of the subject and its intricacy. 1. The great word, as founded by the logos of the solar system and communicated to him by his superior. 2. 3 words committed by the solar logos to each of the 3 logi as follows. A. The sacred sound A to Shiva, he who embodies the spirit or will aspect. It is the word through which God and Father works. God the Father works. B. The sound U to Vishnu, God the Son. He is the form builder and provides the body which the spirit must occupy, thereby making divine incarnation possible. A is the life sound. U is the form sound. C, the sound M to Brahma, who in his work of energy provider links an active intelligence, spirit and form for the self and not self. It might here be pointed out that much information and that the 3 departments of hierarchy of our planet will come to the student who wisely ponders these functions. 3. 7 great words, again based on the sacred 3 sound, AUM. These produce creation, or the manifestations of the 7 planes of our solar system. They are committed not to human entities, but to the 7 great devas, or Raha, lords, who are the ensouling lives of a plane. Hence, in the various initiations, their collaboration is necessary before these keywords can be committed to the initiate. 4. 49 words related to the 49 subplanes or fires. These again are committed to the 49 builders of the sacred fires. The above 2 groups, the words are in the jurisdiction of the 3rd aspect and are given out by Brahma.
Thank you, Janet. Okay, so to relate this to the laws, when he says the above 2 groups of words are in the jurisdiction of the 3rd aspect, it would also be under the implementation of the law of economy. In terms of Fohat, all of these are initiated by the 7 Fohatic, starting with 3 here. The creation or manifestation of the 7 subplanes for our solar system, the sound of these 7 great words would activate their Fohatic counterparts, and in this way these subplanes would be built right down to the 49 subplanes. There's subdivisions of Fohat as well. You can read about this in beautiful stanza in the beginning of a treatise on cosmic fire. Stanza 2, stanza 1's so shorter, you can just start there, but stanza 2 really develops how these subplanes are built. Okay, any thoughts about this? And finally, the syllables all together form a solar phrase. Separated, they form certain words of power, producing different effects. So we just read about, this, how they're separated and how they produce different effects when separated. The solar phrase is the quote, great word as sounded by the logos of the solar system and communicated to him by his superior. So let's take a look at the footnote, which is an excerpt from Some Thoughts on the Gita, referenced by the sentence, the syllables altogether form a solar phrase. Separated, they form certain words of power, producing different effects. So we have this quite extensive footnote, but it's fascinating. So I think you'll find it interesting. Could we get a reader for the beginning of the footnote? It's just keep in mind, this is from this really fascinating booklet. I ran into it just by luck through a bookseller decades ago. I think it was in the 80s, and it's impossible to get anymore. It's been out of print, and very few were printed. And it's yeah, it's we don't even know who the author really is, but there's a great weight to the words, as you'll discover. Okay, reader, please.
Joe, do you want to read?
Who did you call?
You, Joe.
Oh, thank you.
JG.
The Veda is the world's song in human sound that was given to man for his use metaphysically from the standpoint of its meaning and magically from the standpoint of its proper recitation. The world's song obeying certain laws of proportions or the Pythagorean arithmetic and imparting its thrilling effect to the domain of cosmic substance has induced the latter into a crystallization process that the philosopher Plato called the geometry of the cosmos. The various forms that are observed from a molecule of salt crystal to the wonderfully complex organism of the human body are all the structures of the great cosmic geometrizer known as Viswakarma.
Vishvakarma.
Viswakarma.
Yeah, the W is pronounced like a V often.
Okay, Viswakarma. The Deva carpenter in our Puranic writings. The revealed Veda, whose function is to trace out the cosmos from one basic sound substance, symbolized as Om, necessarily split itself into a primal three, a subsequent 7 vowels, and then into 7 notes, and then into 7 combinations of the 7 notes on a basic 3, and then into hymns.
Thank you, Joe.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I think so too. Is that there's such authority in this anonymous author's words. Okay, so first we have the Veda is the is the world's song in human sound that was given to man for his use metaphysically from the standpoint of its meaning and magically from the standpoint of its proper recitation. So you have a metaphysical and a magical qualities to the Vedas. So we'll just take this bit by bit. The world song in human sound, quote unquote, suggests that the Veda represents a universal melody whose inherent harmony, like the harmony of the spheres, or the music of the spheres, reveals the truth that underlies all existence. I think this is the sense of sound on the atmic plane, it would reveal this inherent harmony. Given to man for his use metaphysically from the standpoint of its meaning, suggests that the Vedas were given by high initiates, possibly under the direction of Shambhala, and thus offers principles that guide human life, understanding of the universe, and of one's spiritual journey, like any of the great revelations that have come down from on high. The phrase, and magically from the standpoint of its proper recitation, suggests that when the Vedas are recited with the correct intonation, rhythm, and pronunciation, which are secrets of initiation, they activate, in and of themselves, they activate transformative effects by aligning the disciple's consciousness with cosmic forces of energy. I suspect that there are the source Veda, the original Veda, is probably now not available. That there are translations of that source Veda which are used and are recognized as the available Vedas, and that you would have to be an initiate in this particular line in order to come into contact with that source Veda that would then allow you to employ this magical process of correcting intonation, rhythm, and pronunciation, almost certainly in Sanskrit or even Sinzar. Any thoughts about that? Next up, the world song obeying certain laws of proportions, or the Pythagorean arithmetic, and imparting its thrilling effect to the domain of cosmic substance, has induced the latter into a crystallization process that the philosopher Plato called the geometry of the cosmos. What a sentence. So, the world song itself, from which the Vedas are derived, right, expresses certain precise tonal intervals which crystallize, when expressed, crystallize universal substance into certain archetypal configurations that then form the building blocks of the universe. Configurations whose geometry is in keeping with Pythagorean proportion. This is like an inside look at the evolutionary process through the from the perspective of the world song or of sound. This is very much related to the song of the logos, the great word of the solo logos. Next, the various forms that are observed from a molecule of salt crystal to the wonderfully complex organisms of the human body are all the structures of the great cosmic geometrizer known as Vishvakarma, the Deva carpenter in our Puranic writings. So Vishva means universe and karma means action or deed. Thus, Vishvakarma connotes universal action. The god himself is an amalgam of all the creator gods. In Hindu mythology, he is credited with designing and crafting the celestial cities, quote unquote, things like chariots and weapons that the gods use. For example, he is said to have built the magnificent flying chariots that the opulent abodes of deities and the opulent abodes of deities like Indra. He is also known for creating divine implements, such as the Vajra, which means thunderbolt, for Indra and other mythical artifacts in the Hindu epics. Next, the revealed Veda, whose function is to trace out the cosmos from one basic sound substance, symbolized as Om. Symbolized, notice, is not the actual sound on that plane, necessarily split itself into a primal three, a subsequent 7 vowels, and then into 7 notes, and then into 7 combinations of 7 notes on a basic 3, and then into hymns. So DK gives us more insight on the septenary nature of sound in this passage from a treatise on cosmic fire. Can we get a reader, please?
I think there's some questions. Ariane?
Yes, thank you. This is so difficult, this stuff. So I just wanted to make a couple comments, and maybe you could help me with one question, although I don't want to be unfair with a big question. One is that an externalization of hierarchy, which is a really helpful book to read this time, considering what's happening in America and its parallels with Nazi Germany and such, and how DK talks about how the disciples need to think about it and work with those times. He mentions that that Sanat Kumara, or one of the great lords, used a sound merely a sound to overcome the forces of involution or the forces of darkness, that a sound was unleashed that weakened them tremendously. And so we know, like, when you talk about how we might use something like, trying to wield a thunderbolt or something unknowingly. And so those things are not given to us for our protection. And another thought I was thinking of is this idea that, things appear in sound and visually, and different ways of experiencing them. And some people have compared, like, the structures, how they draw like a chemical structure, with like a hexagon and different letters coming out of it as mandalas. And so, like, there's like this sacred way of perceiving the building blocks of the universe, of our material world. And then finally, I just wanted to ask you how, if you can, and I don't understand string theory I don't understand it, but is there any way to link the idea of string theory with all these ideas about sound? I think that each individual has a characteristic note. Is that not correct? And so I'm just wondering how that relates to string theory.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. At this time, the plan is not restored on Earth, right? That's the last line of the Great Invocation, to restore the plan on Earth, right? Let love and power restore the plan. Let love, let's see, what is it?
Love, light.
Love and power restore the plan on Earth, or something to that effect. We are in a sense below the threshold. That's an indication of the fact that we are in the Kali Yuga, even though there's some Hindu scholars that say that 2025 is the entrance into the next Yuga. Hence, you could say it's very connected to the lost word in Masonry. We've lost the sacred sound in society, right? And yet, DK tells us, we're preparing for the first initiation as a humanity. And so we really are, I believe, in that dark valley of the soul as a kingdom at this point. And we're going to have to rediscover the sacred word in order to um, regain access to the plan. Now, as individuals and small groups, who, like this group, who studies this material, we can reforge a connection. But this is just a time, based on the Kali Yuga, when this connection doesn't rule the societal structure of the planet, right? So that's answer to your first one. The second one, about the structures. Well, he tells us here that the um, world song and all of its components, which break down, he tells us through in these many levels, right? He tells us here, split into primal 3, subsequent 7 vowels, 7 notes, and 7 combinations of 7 notes, all of this finally into hymns, that these all have their correspondent Pythagorean um, um, shapes and numerical values, or I should say numerical relationships, right, that would characterize these qualities. For instance, a dodecahedron in Plato's time was considered a secret of initiation. Its very existence was considered, this is the 12 5-faced Platonic solid, right, where you have 12 face 12 iterations of a 5-sided face, which is the basis of the pentagram and the pentagon. That was considered very sacred and was considered to be the symbol of the universe itself. So, we're not given the initiate's understanding of the relationship between sound and number and Platonic solids, but it certainly is there. And in the meditating on these different Platonic solids, one can align with these higher notes of reality. So that's the second. I have no idea about string theory. I used to have more understanding, but I looked it up once and had a pretty good understanding. Unfortunately, I've lost that. If there's anybody here that knows about string theory that wants to answer that question, then please raise your hand and you could do so. Otherwise, I'm sorry, I can't help you on that one.
Francis, before we move on to someone answering that, if they can I just ask, so in the last, can you hear me?
Yes.
The last line in the more recent form of the Great Invocation, let light, love, and power restore the plan on earth. So have we failed as a species? I mean, was the plan playing itself out, and then we did something that has defied the plan? I mean, why does it need to be restored? The way you described it was almost like you said we haven't achieved the evolutionary attainment to be worthy of the plan, to be able to abide by the plan or to understand it, let alone have access to the sound. But I'm wondering when in that line it says restore the plan. Have we done something that has countered the plan?
Well, I think it's a function of being in this lowest yuga, this Kali Yuga, which is a place of disconnect from our source, compared to the golden and silver and I don't know, is it copper? They have these different metals for these different yugas. And this is the lead, I think it is, iron or lead, I don't remember, in which the connection is lost. So that, in other words, it's not unexpected. It was known. It was known that it would happen, by those who wrote the Vedas, because this is all laid out, the map is laid out. You know, and I'll have to reiterate that this very positive idea that this yuga may be ending even this year. According to some Hindu scholars, you know, this is probably a secret of initiation, but it really strikes me that it's concurrent with the 2025 conclave, you know, that this restoration process. The process of restoring the plan was really initiated in 1925, in the 1925 conclave, through the creation of the new group of world servers, with that the idea of paving, of creating a connection, a link between hierarchy and humanity, in every area of life. You know, the seed groups are involved in this as well. In other words, every walk of life has some form of a new group of world server that functions in order to help restore the plan in that area, you know. So that's was very much underway. DK gave us, you know, a very specific list of conditions that would have to be met before the externalization of the hierarchy could take place and the return of the Christ, which would follow that externalization. We can't know whether we have met that. I mean, you know, I'll just leave it at that. It's, you know, often it's darkest before the dawn, you know. So this could be really a last-ditch effort to what we're seeing universally. And I don't want to get into a big topical discussion, so no follow-up on this part, please. You know, what we're seeing worldwide, this is very, you know, the Dark Brotherhood seems to be really making strides, right? But this really could be the last gasp of the Piscean age and of the Piscean influence. And there's an inevitability in the passing of time into the Aquarian age, just by the fact that astrologically we're moving into the next age that will defeat this influence. You know, for instance, those incarnating now will find no opportunity in the coming time to incarnate. That's all part of this idea of restoring the plan and of regaining the lost word, to put it in context with what we're studying here. Okay, anybody on string theory? If not, we're going to go ahead. I'm sorry, I would have been able to answer that at one point, but my poor old brain, you know, doesn't hold on to everything.
I think we have other questions though.
Yeah,
Barbara?
next up. Barbara?
Yes, so I'll try to make a transition through string theory as I understand it, that and it relates to the law of economy. So string theory says instead of particles that are of physical matter, there are strings of energy.
Right.
And that the that these strings of energy form patterns that go beyond this universe, and that mathematically there are numerous universes that are created simultaneously. So, but I think at the core is that science is less and less seeing particles as matter. but as more as nodes of information within a field. So there are scientists now that are trying to create life. And they would have all of the elements that are listed in the law of economy. They could have dissociation of atoms, distribution, vibratory rhythm, all of these. But there is something that comes even before, that even comes before the sound, the light, geometry. I think that in some ways the Kabbalah, by connecting matter so deeply to the Ein Sof, it is an important consideration for all of this, that there is some life spark that has to be factored into all of this.
Right. Yeah. The life aspect, the essence, that the spirit aspect is sometimes called. Um, right. And so, we could speculate, hypothesize that, those new group of world servers that are working with the scientific community are actually making gains towards restoring the plan. I would think one of the great pillars of this would be Einstein, and then string theory is a further exploration of this idea of moving from a particulate paradigm to an energetic paradigm, right? And then we have this idea of also, being in two places at once, which is part of physics as well, that this streams of energy can be, or the uh, subatomic particles can be particles slash waves, can be in more than one place at the same time, which breaks down the time paradigm. So we have both space and time being, uh, we're seeing other levels of how space and time demonstrate through this cutting edge of physics. And we'll leave it at that. Thanks, Barbara, for stepping in. Appreciate that. I remember some of what you were describing now that you re-described it there. Okay.
So, one more, Joe.
Right. Just a comment. This piece that we've been looking at, this excerpt, speaks of the world song. And I like the idea that the Vedas were written down, were received, in other words, in words, and written down in ancient and more modern India. And in my mind, when he speaks of Plato, that's beautiful because it's the Western side of the world responding from the involution, and it begins an evolution on the spiritual geometries responding. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. Nisa, what have you put here? I'm gonna see, Nisa put in, you described it
I think
as,
it's the
I think
Gita
I'm putting
book.
on CC of the book Francis just referenced. Are you talking about some thoughts on the Bhagavad Gita? Nisa?
I think that's the Gita book itself, right?
Is that the Gita or this little book that we're reading the footnote from?
The little book that you
good.
said you had found.
Yeah, there's some thoughts on the Gita. Oh, I really recommend. I've actually sat down and read this book. It's good enough to just read cover to cover. Here it is. I just double clicked on Nisa's link here, and let's see if it's. I can't do anything with it. Maybe it'll go. Yeah, it goes into. Yeah, good. Thank you, Nisa. Yeah, there it is. Thoughts on the Bhagavad Gita by Abrahman FTS. fellow of the Theosophical Society. That's what FTS means, by the way. So thank you for that. Let's see, get back out of here. There, okay. So yeah, if you should have that in your PDF library. It's, in fact, I'm happy to have it as a PDF as well. Okay, let's see what we have here. Get back. So, we were about to read this, I believe. Is that right? When the questions came up, I think that's right.
Yeah, so Kira, you want to read?
Yes, I will read. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. Form production. 1. Divine thought, the cosmic mental plane. 2. Divine desire, the cosmic astral plane. 3. Divine activity, the cosmic physical plane, our 7 systemic planes. The logoic breath, first plane, the sound A. This is the first etheric appearance of a solar system upon the atomic subplane of the cosmic physical plane. The seeds of life are all latent. Faculty inheres from an earlier solar essence. The logoic sound, second plane, the sound AU, this is the body of the solar system in the second ether. This plane is the archetypal plane. The seed of life are vibrating, or the seeds of life are vibrating or germinating. The 7 centers of energy are apparent. The one Deva Agni is seen as 7. The form is now potentially perfect. The logoic triple word, the third plane, the sound AUM, Om. The body of the solar system in substance of the third etheric plane is seen, and the 3 function as one. The triple energy of the logos is coordinated, and nothing now can hinder the work of evolution. The 3 groups of devas are active, and the archetypal form is in process of materialization. The logoic centenary word, the 4th plane, the 7-syllabled word, the logoic etheric centers become active. The etheric body of the solar system is now complete, though it will not be perfected till the end of another Manvantara. The greater body of vitality is ready to energize the dense physical vehicle. The 7 centers with their 49 major petals are vibrant, and consciousness thrills through every atom in the system.
Thank you, Kira. Okay, so you can easily associate the laws that we're studying with these 3 levels of sound, starting at this highest level with the law of synthesis, though it's, this this form production involutional passage that from ToCF is seeing the this law of synthesis from another perspective. We call it the law of synthesis from an evolutionary perspective, right? As that last stage of becoming, and it is. But it also exists as a law and demonstrates through the logoic breath as the sound A, and initiates first etheric appearance, right? So then you would have the law of attraction associated with the AU, and finally the law of economy, which we're now studying with the AUM. Okay. What DK doesn't address in this passage is HPB's last phrase and then into hymns. It's not actually HPB, it's this Brahma FDS, which suggests articulation of the world's song on the higher mental plane, right? This is a downward involutional passage of sound finally resolving into what are called here hymns. And I would think this is an expression of the higher mental plane. Okay, footnote continues. Could we get a reader, please?
Kirsten.
All this falling into the material field of the consonants gradually produce the manifested crystallized forms which are collectively taken as the universe. The world to a thinker is the magic motion produced by the Orphean singer or the Hindu Sarasvati. In the Vishnu Purana second part, you'll see that the power that resides in the sun is represented as the three-sided Vedic power, that the power as Rik creates as Yajus.
Oh, what I'd like to do, because here when we sit, no, I can see this water running. Here we only see like this. So let's say if I saw
I don't know who that was speaking, but I just muted them. Can you continue, please?
Yes, as Yajus preserves, and as Sama destroys. Rik is therefore the creative song of the Devas in the sun. Yajus, the song of preservation, and Sama, the song of destruction of the Devas in the sun, and construction of the Devas in the moon. Rik, therefore, is the song of the Devas, and Sama, the song of the Pitris, and Yajua, the intermediate song. The functions of the Vedas must, of course, vary according to the standpoint. If you take the Pitris, Sama is their constructive song, and Rik is their destructive note. The three Vedas correspond to every Trinity nature, and I request you will search for further information in the much abused Puranas.
Thank you. So first, all these falling into the material field of the consonants, gradually producing the manifested crystallized forms, which are collectively taken as the universe. So this reinforces the idea that consonants represent the material or form aspect, and vowels represent quality, meaning, and intention. So in terms of the aspect, it would be like consonants would be the third aspect, responding to the law of economy, whereas the vowels would represent the second aspect with quality, meaning, and intention. Together, they make up the creative potency of magically directed speech, the specifics of which, as we've just learned, are the secrets of initiation. Next, the world to a thinker is the magic motion produced by the Orphean singer or the Hindu Sarasvati. There's actually a lot here A world thinker in this context is one who is able to perceive the creative forces that animate the cosmic etheric planes, the higher four subplanes of the cosmic physical plane. The quote, magic motion produced by the Orphean singer or the Hindu Sarasvati are two examples of a specific manipulation of these higher forms and energies to produce tangible magical results. The magicians being Orpheus and Sarasvati. Orpheus was renowned for his enchanting music, so powerful that it could move not just the hearts of his human listeners, but also the plant and animal kingdoms. Sarasvati is not only the goddess of knowledge, art, and music, but also a divine embodiment of pure creative energy. Can we get a reader, please?
Magda, do you want to read?
According to a lesser known but enchanting legend, the Gandharvas, celestial beings born from the fragrance of flowers, once stole the Soma plant, whose app, Somras, granted vitality and immortality to the gods. Rather than wage war, the gods turned to Sarasvati, goddess of wisdom, music, and eloquence. Sarasvati descended to the Gandharvas realm not with weapons, but with her veena. As she played, her music shimmered with such divine beauty that it entranced the Gandharvas, stilling their minds and stirring their hearts. They were so captivated that they begged her to teach them the art of music. Sarasvati agreed, but with a condition. They must return the Soma plant. In awe of her artistry and eager to learn, the Gandharvas consented. She taught them celestial melodies, and in return, the Somras was peacefully restored to the gods.
Perfect example of the triumph of the fourth ray harmony as a concluding form to the conflict, as a resolution to the conflict of the Gandharvas. Its whole thing could be, a kind of metaphor, a story metaphor for how the fourth ray functions. Well, we started a few minutes late, so I don't mind having gone over 5+ minutes, but we are out of time. We'll pick up where we left off next time.